close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join
Welcome
us
to
for the
Turn the
next
Page,
episode.
the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of an absolutely lovely novel about the performing arts. It really captures the highs and lows of performance and of going for your dreams in a really interesting span of the 20th century, and I am so excited to talk about it. Welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, my name is Susan Dormady Eisenberg, and my novel is The Voice I Just Heard. It's the story of Nora Costello, a soprano with crippling stage fright who loses her brother in Vietnam and wonders how she'll survive without her North Star and soul family cheerleader. The year is 1970, and Nora's working at a summer theater in Latham, New York, fondly known as The Tent, where she meets an actor who might be her true love. He's a washed up Broadway baritone with a raft of problems. He knows a lot about singing, but she wonders if he might break what's left of her heart.
It is so lovely, and I am so enjoying following Nora on her journey. Before we get to her journey, though, I'd love if we could hear a little bit about your journey as a writer, and perhaps your other novel as well, One More Seat at the Round Table.
Absolutely. I started out in PR for several performing arts organizations, and then I founded my own writing company in Washington, D.C., and I did a complete about face and worked for banks and hospitals. And then around the age of 40, I finally tackled fiction, which had always been my dream. But before that and during that, I also did some arts journalism, and my specialty was interviewing singers. So that brings me to the voice I just heard. I wanted to write about the joys and challenges of classical singing. However, I'm also a Camelot buff, and I wrote a novel called One More Seat at the Round Table, a novel of Camelot, which explores the travails of Camelot while it was moving from New York rehearsals to Toronto to Boston and back to New York. And it was a total nightmare. So the book follows Camelot's journey. That novel came out in 2023. And The Voice I Just Heard was originally released in 2012. When I read it after I wrote the Camelot book, I decided I had taken the wrong turn and I had given it the wrong ending. And so I completely rewrote the book and re released it in 2023, which is this year.
Hmm. I'm so interested in that process of revising the book and re-releasing it. I'm curious about what was it like revisiting the story to do this revision? Had it been in your head for a very long time, or did you sort of stumble upon revisiting the text and see your characters in a new light? How did that all work?
Well, like many authors, it's hard to go back. It was hard for me to go back and reread. When I did, I saw it so clearly for the first time. I hadn't looked at it for 12 years, and suddenly I saw what I had done wrong. The first thing I hadn't done was establish why my character was in such conflict about singing. So I added a prologue to show the conflict, which is that she really had vocal stage fright that she couldn't control. And then I realized the ending between Bart and Nora was just wrong. Also, I took them into the world of opera, which is very glittery and glamorous, but it didn't gel with the rest of the book, which was, a deeply personal journey toward being able to be the person you wanted to be. And so it was very easy once I figured out where I'd gone wrong to go back. Also, some of my readers in earlier versions did not like Bart Wheeler.
Mm.
At the at the end of his summer affair with Nora, he just walked away. And yes, it is a bit of a plot spoiler, but this time he doesn't just walk away. So he's much more likable, and that was important to me. I don't want you to hate the male character.
So tell us a little bit more about Nora, if you like. When we meet her, she's reeling from the loss of her brother Liam, and she is, trying to figure out this journey to her dreams. Could you talk a little bit about shaping her as a character, and particularly how she is shaped by her times?
Well, I should say that I grew up during Vietnam, and Vietnam was really a very seminal event in my coming of age.
Mm,
And I had lost a friend in the war and wanted to write about it, but not the political side, the family side.
mm,
What's it like? And I think that many of us grow up with an idea of what we might like to do. But when we're young, we're very influenced by our family. And the family is all, I mean, as you're starting to leave the nest and go into the work world or the career world. In Nora's case, she was very close to her brother Liam, but her parents just were not excited. They were very traditional Catholic people, and they were not excited about the idea that she was going to go into show business. They had never heard her sing when she could really do a good job. She always tended to flub her work or singing when she was performing for them. So naturally, they didn't think it was a good idea. So it was Nora was a character that I loved. I always loved her. She was struggling on all fronts. She really had a great relationship with Liam, and then when he was gone, she wasn't sure what to do and how she'd move forward. She was just graduating from Catholic University, which has a great drama department, and she was thinking of going on in theater. When she meets Bart Wheeler, he's a graduate of Indiana Conservatory of Music, and he says, "You have a great voice. You should be in a music conservatory, not a theater program." So that started a whole process for her of thinking, what do I do with my voice? How can I use it? And how also can I earn my parents' approval or at least their support?
That's such a tricky part of coming of age and growing up is sort of learning to distinguish between where your dreams begin and those of your parents end. And I think maybe sometimes the farther that we get from home, the easier it becomes to see these things with time. Um, in terms of her journey and how it intersects with Bart's, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about shaping his character and particularly their dynamic. I'm really interested in relationships between artists because there's always like this tension between collaboration and competition, if that makes sense. And I
Oh,
think
that's so
some,
true.
yeah.
That's so true.
Hmm.
Well, I had worked in the theater, so I knew a lot about actors and how they think. Bart, what I love about Bart is that he is a very solid person who has a very specific day job. And he was earning his living doing his job instead of performing because he had backed away from performing after a crisis that he had. So when he meets Nora, he's kind of moonlighting. I mean, he's basically filling in for an actor who's had an injury, and he's not really earning a living as a performer at this time. When he hears her sing, he's absolutely stunned because he's a sensational singer himself. And he has, as I say, conservatory credits, and he's been on Broadway. He's been on tour in a national company of Camelot. Yeah, there's Camelot again. And he really sees her potential, but she doesn't see it. And so, in this way, he stumbles into the role, as he puts it, of mentor. So, a pivotal moment for Bart and Nora is his desire to share what he knows about opera because he feels when he hears her sing, she should go into opera. She should forget the theater. Now, the reason for that is that if you have a big, beautiful, high flying coloratura, most theater roles honestly don't take advantage of the high notes. And he felt her high notes were her money notes. And so did everybody who ever heard her sing. So he shares the Metropolitan Opera with her on opening night in 1970. And that changes everything for Nora, not for Bart. As he goes to the Met, he suddenly realizes, oh, it's probably too late for me. He's in his 30s. It's not too late, but he has a horrible feeling of, I'll never get what I want in this business. And she has the opposite feeling. You opened the door. You showed me what I could be. This is what I want.
It's such a powerful moment. And I think that it captures something that I think is very hard to capture on the page. And I love to ask this question of people who write about music. There is this quote from, I can't remember who it is now. I always forget, but a writer once said that writing about music is like dancing about architecture.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, here was something that happened when I was working on the book originally. I came in contact with a man who had a bootleg recording of the 1970 Ernani at the Met. So
Mm,
I actually had it in my ears to work with. I do think it's hard to describe. I also think it's very hard to describe ballet on the page.
mm,
Same thing. Um, and I actually had a song composed for my novel for the reason that I couldn't imagine a song. I wanted to describe a real song. So I had it composed, the lines written at the Falls by Laurie Laitman. She's a very famous now opera and art song composer. And Laurie composed the song to an 1804 poem about the Cohoes Falls. And then I could hear the song. She had it recorded. I knew how it was supposed to be sung. It is tricky. I did have a lot of trouble with that.
mm. Yeah, I think one of the ways that you bridge it is by talking about how it makes people feel to hear it, right? Because I think
That's
that
right.
we
That's
are
right.
we can like empathize with how somebody feels listening to a piece, even if we can't hear it ourselves. Though in this case, we can, which is very very wonderful.
Music
Um,
evokes so much emotion.
mhm,
And that's what happened to Nora. Not just that she could see herself on stage, because that's one thing, but what does music evoke around you? I mean, it's just in the ears of the listeners. The opera is one of the only places now that you can hear what's known as throat to ear singing.
mm,
We know that everybody else going to Broadway, you're going to hear a lot of miking. Um, so the opera has, in a way, a purity of sound that you won't hear other places, and that's worth thinking about when you want to be a singer.
absolutely. Um, let's talk a little bit more about the setting in
A host New
New
York.
York. Yes, I went down a rabbit hole researching
You
Cohoes
did.
after reading some of this, and it's such a lovely little city. I fell in love with the old library that used to be in a church
Oh
that people
yes,
have pictures
yes.
of.
St. John's
Um,
Church.
and I know that you also you grew up there, so can you
I
talk
did.
about writing a place that you are very familiar and intimate with?
Thank you for asking. Being able to take myself back to Cohoes and, around Cohoes, Latham is near Cohoes and Loudonville is too, was the greatest joy of writing the voice I just heard. I mean, I loved writing about singing and I loved writing about the backstage side of the tent where I had gone and seen my first musical at age 13, I think, 12. But going back to Cohoes allowed me to re-examine Cohoes. When I was growing up there, it was a small former mill town. I grew up in the 50s, I'm old, and it was a thriving community. But most of us who grew up around downtown did not ever see the falls. They were kind of off on their own. You couldn't see them from the road. So I got to find at age 40 the Cohoes Falls. And when I saw them, I was shocked. They were magnificent. I saw them on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1990. And I never dreamed that this majestic waterfall existed in my old hometown. So being able to write about it, being able to talk about the music hall, which was being refurbished and reopened in 1974, and the last scene of my book is set there. That was a joy to me. I got to interact with various Cohoes people, including the former mayor, and he was just deciding to refurbish the falls at that time. The Cohoes Falls had been harnessed for hydroelectricity, and it's hard for people to believe, but they seldom ran. Only the excess snow and rain got to go over the falls. The rest was sort of, I call it hijacked, but I mean harnessed. Now they've been restored and they run some of the time, so tourists could go and see them. Also, the mill. The Harmony Mill that's along North Mohawk Street is an amazing architectural achievement. It was the largest cotton mill in the United States in the mid 1800s. We only think of Lowell as the major mill center.
Mm.
Really, it was Cohoes.
Wow, yeah, such an interesting history, and it was such a great glimpse of this rich cultural life that exists upstate and has existed. And my confession as a downstater, we are very New York City focused. We are parochial, in our nearness to the city. And so it was really fascinating for me to also see that there is a really rich performing arts culture upstate as well. It was such a yeah, really a lovely glimpse into a city at a particular time. I really enjoyed it.
The Cohoes Music Hall is a gem. As I say, it was refurbished. It opened in the 1870s and reopened in the 1970s. But it's like the Goodspeed Opera House. It's a small Victorian opera house, basically. And it's up and running and shows there constantly. I mean, yes, there's a rich history in that part of the world. I did want to say, too, that the Cohoes Falls was the site of the founding of the Iroquois Confederacy.
Mm.
And it's a hugely important historic area for Native Americans.
So, what are you working on right now? Are you writing at this moment?
I am always writing. Yes. Well, I have gone back to a book that I've been working on for about 12 years. It's a novel about the life and times of the American sharpshooter Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley is an amazing icon of feminism. Annie didn't see herself that way, but nonetheless, she was and is.
Mm.
She was the marquee star of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, the only star that was a woman, the highest paid member of the company, and he toured the globe. So she's a very interesting figure to me, and it's a backstage novel because she's performing. She started out as a performer in music halls and then went on the stage as a sharpshooter.
Mm. I love that you get to continue to work in this sort of the performing arts. And I love that, when you are writing stories that take place in the performing arts, you always get this really interesting contrast between offstage and onstage and who we are when we perform and who we are when we're not performing and we are ourselves. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this book, and I appreciate the time that you took to talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just did want to say that the Metropolitan Opera shop is carrying the voice I just heard. And this is such a bit of validation for me as an author about singers.
Oh, that's
I
lovely.
just went there and saw it on the shelf and I was ecstatic.
Wow. Well, that's one place where you can get this book, listeners. Do you have any other bookshops you like to send people to for books?
Well, actually, for my books, I will send them to Amazon.com
Mm.
and B&N.com, which is Barnes and Noble, and the Met Opera Shop. So I think we're covered.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. And thank you, listeners. Please check out The Voice I Just Heard. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is available as of our recording, and it will be available when you hear this on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas, everybody. And yeah,
Thank
thank
you. Thank you so much, Jen. This is a Christmas present to me.
Yes, I'm so glad.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right, everybody, it is time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.